Hello and welcome to The Enthusiasm Project. My name is Tom. This is Season 3, Episode 7. And today I wanted to dive a little bit, I don't know about deeper, but at least continue or re-examine a conversation that my wife Heather and I had on our podcast last week, The Couples Table. Or actually, I guess it was probably 2 weeks ago, where we sort of talked about making money as a quote-unquote content creator and how dangerous that can be, and why on earth does everything that you do as a hobby or a creative endeavor suddenly seem like it needs to end up as, you know, a money-making venture. So that's the main thing that I wanted to go into today, because let me tell you, I've got thoughts about this. But before that, it has been a while, so I hope that you're doing okay. The month of August, which is over, really was quite a month. And basically, in semi-early August, my dad passed away, and then the new school year began like a week later, and it was just complete chaos, and, you know, it's pretty rough. So I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about that stuff. It's just been, you know, like, fortunately that, you know, there was enough time to, well, not really enough, but at least some time to just sort of like exist and have feelings and all those things before the world like required to continue on moving. But that's just essentially where things have gone. And so I've been slowly kind of easing back into recording stuff. You know, that's luckily there's, as I've talked about before, kind of a few, you know, pre-recorded videos and things that are ready to go. So there's not really much of a hiccup in terms of actual, like, I don't think anyone would notice necessarily, but some things like the podcast, which I normally do pretty much right before they go out, it's just something I didn't, it's not that I didn't have the time for, it was just, I just didn't want to, it just felt wrong to do, and I just wasn't kind of up for it. So I've been easing back into that. Heather and I have done a couple live streams. Peter Lindgren and I have done 2 episodes of our podcast, and I this past weekend made a video for the first time in a while. So it feels nice to like get back into the swing of things. But, you know, like, life has a way of just sort of shifting your priorities for you. So that's essentially what has happened. And today, I want to talk about not those things at all, which I fully recognize is a privilege, because if I get to spend my time thinking about, you know, the intricacies of a creative endeavor or creating content for YouTube or whatever, it probably means things are mostly fine. Like, if that's what I'm spending my energy thinking about and talking about, it's probably a good sign in general. But everything is okay. I'm doing well. A lot of people have sent messages and sent kind thoughts and all that stuff, and I really, really have appreciated that. I know it's like sometimes you want to say something nice, and what can you really do like over a message or social media, but just like knowing the kind thoughts are out there, it really actually does make a difference. So I really do appreciate that from everybody who shared those over the past few weeks with me. And in fact, with that in mind, I actually have a voice message from Ryan at anchor.fm/galaxycdsrocks, and I'll let you listen to it, and then I'll respond.
Hey, Tom, my name's Ryan, and we've never met because you're in California and I'm in Ohio, but I feel like I got to do a check-in on a missing friend, because this is the second Monday in a row I've come downstairs to get started on my work week with my cup of coffee, ready to tune in to the new podcast, and there hasn't been anything. So I'm just checking in to make sure everything's okay. I hope you're well and safe, and your family is as well. I just wanted to say thank you for your content, for your presence, for your attitude. You have truly been an inspiration. You inspired me to not only start a YouTube channel, but a podcast, neither of which has anything to do with anything that you have to do with, but just watching your content has been hugely inspirational for me. So I just wanted to say thank you and check in, and I hope you are well and safe.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate that. And that's kind of what I was talking about, is they're like, just knowing, it's just so great to be able to connect in any way with other people who are out there in the world. He's in Ohio, I'm in California, but still in a weird way, we have become part of each other's worlds, which is very, very cool. So thank you for the kind message. Best of luck to you on your podcast and your YouTube channel. Even if they're not the same topic, it's the same sort of process, regardless of what your channel deals with. And that's really what I wanted to dive into today. So I'm actually recording this episode. Actually, I'm probably just going to post it right after I record it, because my plan was to record last weekend, but now it's Tuesday, and I just kind of, especially knowing Ryan's out there worrying, I don't want to make him wait another week, so I'll just post this today, and then I'll have another episode on Monday as per usual. But let's kind of dive into today's topic, and which I'm looking through the lens of YouTube, because that's what I know and that's what I experience, and podcasting to another extent. But it could really apply to sort of any creative endeavor. And what Heather and I were talking about on our show, and just conversations we've had in private, is sort of, why does everything you do suddenly need to become, or feels like needs to become, a money-making endeavor? You know, obviously, like, in some ways it's sort of obvious. So if you start a YouTube channel and your YouTube channel gets to a certain size, then you can start putting ads and bringing in money. Or someone might reach out and email you and tell you, hey, you know, we want to sponsor something or send you something. And then it just sort of happens organically. But it's even, you know, I mean, how many times have you seen somebody, you know, do something, draw something, make something, bake something, whatever, and if they're good at it, half the responses when they share it with someone is, oh my gosh, you should open a blank, you should start doing this, you should sell these, you should do it. It's like, why? Sure, if that's the person's goal, why not? But also, why can't they just do it because they like it? And the example that I was talking about with Heather, where the room that I'm in right now, where I make all my videos, has a ton of instruments in it. Ironically, like, most of the room is taken up by instruments, even though I mostly use it for like audio and video stuff. But I have never made a penny off of any of these instruments. I'm definitely not good enough to make a penny off of any of these instruments, but they've been here for like 20 years, almost 19 years. And I mean, they've cost a lot of money to buy them and to maintain them and to modify them. That really costs a lot of money, but I've never made any money off of it. So should I just give up on that hobby, or is it just okay that I can have these things that I enjoy and I play those instruments and I have fun doing it, and it doesn't really matter if nobody else ever hears it. It doesn't really matter if there's nothing, you know, no content created by it. It's just sort of a thing that I enjoy, and it can be okay to just enjoy your thing. You can have a YouTube channel where you just post your videos, engage with your community, and that's it. Maybe you'll earn like a little bit of money on the side just because that's kind of a thing that happens, but it doesn't have to suddenly become your ultimate goal to then be a full-time YouTuber. Same thing with the podcast. I talked about this a couple episodes ago, but I did a podcast workflow episode for how I do this podcast, which is a very simple workflow. One of the reasons I'll be able to just publish it today. And I have gotten so many comments on that video where people are asking, can you run me through your workflow? And I'm like, it's this video. The whole video is the workflow. And they're like, no, but what do you do for editing? And what do you do for this? No. It's what's in the video. That's why it's called my like podcast workflow. That's all there is to it. And then inevitably, lately, it seems like more, I've been getting the comments of, how do you monetize? How much do you make from your podcast? How do you get sponsors for your podcast? And I'm like, zero. I've never made any money off of any podcast. And now I have 3 podcasts and I've made $0. If anything, I've spent money on equipment and web hosting. So it's not a money-making endeavor. But you know what? It's so fun to have this podcast where I can kind of explore things on my own. It's unbelievably fun to have one on Heather's channel where we can talk about things together that are sometimes totally unrelated to the normal topics I talk about, actually most of the time. And it's great to have a podcast with Peter where we can really dive into the like not underbelly, that sounds bad, but the nuts and bolts of like the YouTube world, especially from his perspective, because he has a YouTube channel that's like rapidly approaching 400,000 subscribers. So if you want to talk about full-time YouTube, the things that he encounters are in a lot of ways exactly the same as what I or anyone else would, but also kind of different. And it's fun to just sort of look at things from those different angles, make those connections, like have just fun. And it doesn't make any money. I'm sure there's ways we could, but why? Like, we don't have to. There's nothing wrong with making money. I do want to preface this. I hope this doesn't come off as me saying like it's a bad thing to make money off your creativity or the stuff that you make. It is not. That's like why Patreon exists. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can do something you love and make money off of it at the same time, I mean, that's great. That's a win-win situation. But it's that pressure of having to make money. And the thing that really like sparked the idea in my head was I've been going on a lot more bike rides over this whole summer, and just, it's a great way to kind of get out of the house. And one thing about cycling for me is it's sort of like a problem-solving mechanism. There have been so many times where I have something on my mind, whether it's serious or not, but just something that I can't quite work out, and I go on a bike ride, and just by the time I come back from the ride, I have like sorted it out or come up with a solution or a plan or whatever. And I don't know what it is, but it's like a magical thing. And so I've had lots of time to think about stuff. And if nothing else is going on, I kind of just think about like my YouTube channel and like, what direction should I take? And should I do this? And should I do this? And what are other people doing? And why is this a thing that's happening? And a thing that's popped up over and over again is that I feel kind of sad when I see creators who I admire and whose work I enjoy creating work that I personally don't admire or enjoy. And I don't mean for that to sound ultra like negative or critical, but largely that comes from the fact that there have been quite a few of my what were like top channels that I enjoyed cranking out nothing but sponsored content lately. And of course, like, you gotta put food on the table, you gotta pay the bills, feed the family, the whole thing. So it's not like they're super villains or anything, but it's just not interesting to watch because, let's put it this way. One of the most recent things, which isn't necessarily exactly what I'm talking about, but it's a thing that does happen. So a week or two ago, DJI released a new phone stabilizer, the Osmo 4, I think it is. And you know how I know this? Well, it's because about 25 videos of my subscription feed were all about that, and they were released and posted at the exact same time, which, if you know me, you know is something that just really is annoying to me. And I fully understand it. Like, they don't, it's not like a conspiracy or anything. Companies reach out, they go, hey, new product coming out, we'll send it to you early. Don't talk about it, but you can test it, you can make a video about it. We're going to release it on this day and time. You can post your video on that day and time and be like the first one. Because obviously, it's in the news, it's a big deal. You want to be the first person or one of the first people to talk about it. And I fully understand that. But the problem is, I have a hard time looking at those types of videos most of the time as being authentic and genuine because, I mean, let's put it this way. There's a very big difference between somebody doing a review of a product because a company sent it to them a week or two in advance and, gave them a little bit of money and told them, hey, post this on this day and time, even if they have no obligation to say anything positive or anything, but just that context is very different than, say, you're looking to get something from someone and it's something that they genuinely needed for their workflow. So they shopped around a bit. They found what they think is the best solution to that problem. They've used it for a long time. They understand it. And now they're sharing their thoughts about it. That's not nearly as sexy because that's also probably going to be like a year or so after the release of the product, or at least months after the release of it. But it's going to be infinitely more authentic. And so when you see, tons of people who literally never use phone stabilizers suddenly talking about how this is like a game-changing thing, and it's like, I know, sure, you're evaluating it on its merits. It seems to be like you're doing an objective job. You're showing me what it can do, but I know you're never going to use this thing again. Like, I know it's not going to be a part of your workflow. I know it's not something you were really thinking about. You were trying, like, it's just the next thing to talk about. And again, worse things happen in the world, so it's not the end of the world. But when you just see that kind of thing, and sometimes only that thing from creators that you typically really enjoy, it just becomes tiring to me because it's just not enjoyable as a viewer. And obviously, like, then as someone who has a YouTube channel, I think about those things. Well, what would I do if a company or a product that I'm interested in like made that offer to me. It's easy to say like, I don't want to do that when it's not an option, but what would I do in those situations? And I think the best thing to do is go like, well, if I ran a channel where I talk all the time about phone stabilizers, you know what? It would kind of make sense. Like, okay, if Rode was coming out with the Rodecaster Pro 2, which I'm just making this up, and they approached me and they're like, hey, we're going to come out with this. Do you want to test it early? That would totally make sense, right? So even though it was the same thing where I'm getting the product early and the video's read, I would still just, for the sake of not being annoying, I would like never post the video at that time. I'd just do it like a day later or something. But that would make sense. And it could still be authentic because it's this thing that plays a huge part in my workflow. I have, I don't say relationship with it, but an understanding of it and a perspective on it that would be helpful to other people. If a company shows up and says, hey, here's a phone stabilizer, I mean, my answer is like, well, I have one that I got like 2 years ago that I use very rarely. So like, I never talk about them on my channel. It doesn't really make sense. So sorry, I would definitely love more money, of course, but it just doesn't really make sense. And that's what it kind of, I don't know. It just, that's where it really rubs me the wrong way. And then it's sort of empowering because the reason I like thinking about this stuff is not to criticize other people's decisions because I don't know the whole story. I don't understand, like they need to maintain a relationship with a company. They need to pay bills, support a family, support employees, whatever. And this is a very easy way to earn a little extra income that month. Like that's not a crime. But what's interesting in thinking about it and looking at what you don't like is it helps you to understand what you do like and what you do want to do. It's almost like when I was a student teacher, before you're like a regular classroom teacher, I had to work as a student teacher for a school year where it's sort of like indentured servitude basically because you don't get paid, but you work full time and essentially you just take over another teacher's classroom and teach all their classes. And you get no money for this. You actually have to pay because you're still going to school also. Anyway, it's a really terrible deal. But before I did that, before I was officially student teaching, I just did a lot of observations. And one of my good friends is an English teacher. And so I would observe his class because I knew him and it was easy. And he's a very good teacher. So when I watch his class, it's just like, gosh, everything is just working like a well-oiled machine. He knows his subject matter inside and out. He knows how to make it engaging for every level of student. And it's just like, it was super cool to sit there and watch that. And then after I observed him quite a few times, he was like, well, you should probably go observe some other teachers. So immediately his first thing was to send me to like his friends on campus because a teacher like him is going to have other teacher friends who also perform at high levels. And I would go in and be like, wow, even though this is a different subject or whatever, this is really interesting to see. But then he was like, you know what, I'm going to send you to some different teachers. And I feel bad saying this, but he sent me to basically bad teachers, which was kind of sad because they were so honored that somebody would send like a student to observe their methods or whatever. But he was like, I'm going to send you to the bad teachers, the bad examples. And I ended up learning so much more from that than from watching the good teachers. Because when things are being done so well, I kind of don't know why. You're just sort of like, well, this is how it is. But when things are not being done well, that's when you can see like, oh my gosh, this problem is occurring because they aren't doing this or they're doing too much of that. And it was really eye-opening to see it that way. So I ended up learning a lot of what not to do, which was almost more valuable than learning what to do. And I think this is kind of the same thing. So it's not that I want to like just criticize all these other channels of people who work really, really hard. But I want to look at that and go, oh, okay, if I don't like that, regardless of YouTube strategies and growth and goals and all those things, if it's just something that bothers me as a person, that bothers me as a viewer on the platform, and that bothers me as somebody who puts out work on the platform, that's important to think about. And I really like that my YouTube channel has started to generate money. It's really helpful. I've hit a point where it's obviously it's nowhere near like a full-time income or anything, but it is to the point where for some basic things, like if I need a new small piece of equipment or something like that, I can just use money that the channel made to do that. So it's like it's supporting itself, and that's kind of cool. And of course, there's a little bit of extra money I can pay off a bill early, or things like that. And there's just there's like this slight extra cushion of money that just wasn't there before, and that feels very, very good. I don't dislike that at all. But chasing that specifically, just trying to maximize every single penny I possibly can, is just not something that I enjoy. I'll take Twitter for an example. There are several channels who seem to basically only do sponsored content now, or at least like 90% sponsored content. And then I'll follow those people on Twitter because they're funny and engaging. And then their Twitter feed has kind of become the same thing, where it will literally be like, oh my gosh, I'm using, this piece of equipment that I really love. Okay. I have made those posts before because I get excited about something. You can check more out about it here. Like, here's a link to my kit, and then it's basically like an affiliate link directory to buy everything from. Like, your whole everything that you do now is just a sales pitch. And then if that's ever brought up, it comes back to, well, I need to feed my family. I need to do this. I need to do that. And that makes sense. Or does it? And this is what I really wanted to look at. Why does it have to become a full-time thing? If it happens organically, I'll take Peter Lindgren as an example, because he and I had like basically the exact same channel until a year ago. We started our channels at the same time, had the same number of videos, and almost the exact same number of subscribers until August of 2019, when he started getting like thousands, if not tens of thousands per day. And he went from, 5,000 or 6,000 to, by the end of 2019, I think he was at 100 and at least 100, maybe 150, and now he's at almost 400. Like, it just really blew up. And he literally has no idea why. He was working really hard on his videos, but it was just something kicked off, and then a big audience found him, and he had good work, and they discovered it. And throughout that time, then he was able to pivot and make that his full-time job. And he's super smart about how he does that. Obviously, like, YouTube brings in ad revenue. He's really big on affiliate links, which makes sense because there's a lot of gear talk on the channel. So anytime you talk about gear, it just makes sense to include an affiliate link. And he does rare sponsored content. I think he said that he's done like maybe 3 sponsored videos or something. So every time it might be something like that. And then maybe another company will hire him to do like work that's not on his channel. So that's kind of become a full-time thing. And it just happened organically. I think that's absolutely an exception and not the rule. That's just not a thing that happens to everybody. But in that situation, it's just like you're adapting to this new thing that popped up, where now like you can make a full-time living, more than a full-time living, doing this thing that you like. And his workflow hasn't really changed so much, and he just gets to do the thing that he loves to do. And that's really, really cool. The problem is when that's not what's happening and you're trying to choke it to life. And, I think, for example, I'll use myself as an example. With a YouTube channel that has 25,000 subscribers, I do not make a full-time income. And especially if you threw in like health insurance and stuff, not even close to that. But I think that if I were to like, for some reason, if I were just to go full in and try to make it full time, just accept every single sponsorship offer that came in to email, you would see some super weird products on my channel, and just every possible affiliate link you can think of, and promoting everything ultra aggressively across social media, and just throwing ads all over my videos, just unskippable mid-roll ads, the whole deal. I think I could actually make a full-time, or pretty close to a full-time living, at least like the full-time living I'm making through my regular job as a teacher. I don't want to do that, though, because one, that would be terrible. What an awful experience that would be for anybody who actually likes my channel, to just see those terrible videos about garbage products, to see 18 ads in a video, to basically never hear me talk unless I'm trying to sell you something. And the reason I need to do that is because I have to pay a mortgage every month by creating that stuff. And every time I make a video, it has to perform at a certain level. Otherwise, it's a failure and there's stress. Right now, if a video doesn't do well, it sucks. And I don't like the way that feels, but it's also no sweat. I still got to make a video I liked. Even if it doesn't do particularly well, usually the people that do watch it still enjoy it. It still serves some value, and that's cool. I'll just move on to the next one. But if that's where your living is coming from, that's not the case. There's a whole different set of stress. And the thing to think about, I believe, is why do that? I know you can say then like, well, I'm doing what I love as my full-time job, but it's like, is it? That sounds so stressful to negotiate all of those brand deals or sponsorships, especially when half the companies are kind of shady to begin with, to know that everything you make has to bring in a certain amount of views and money. Otherwise, you're not going to generate the revenue that you need. To know that things are kind of unstable. So just because you had a good month this month doesn't mean next month is going to be the same. And you're just kind of always living on the edge. Plus, you're putting in who knows how many hours, definitely more hours than a regular full-time job would require. Plus, you don't have, the security and the stability. And it's just like, I feel like at that point, if you're working that hard to be a full-time content creator, why not just have a regular full-time job? Like even kind of just a boring full-time job, because even if that job sucks, you're not going to work as many hours at that as you are at the thing that you're doing, at trying to be like a full-time creator. The pay is going to be more consistent. You might end up with like health benefits of some kind. Maybe if you're lucky, some paid time off, and then you can just kind of leave work at work. So yeah, you have to go to work and you can't focus on the thing that you're excited about. But then when you're done, now you can focus on the stuff you're creating. You can do whatever you want. You can say no to brand deals. You can make any video you want. If it doesn't do well, you don't have to, lose like sleep over it. You can just sort of enjoy the thing that you're doing and have fun. And I remember there was a time when like creating stuff for YouTube was just fun. And I really miss that. I miss that it always comes down to money. And I know working with high school students, if the topic of YouTube comes up, if anybody says that they have a YouTube channel, especially like anybody who's out of high school, the first question that my students will ask them is, how many subscribers do you have and how much money do you make? And that's just the first thing on everybody's mind. They will literally look up people's Social Blade accounts where it gives like a very rough and hugely inaccurate estimate of what they're making every month. And they'll kind of like jump to the highest numbers possible and think like, wow, that's what it's. No, not at all. And I get that. They're teenagers. It's just sort of where their mind is. And I like to work to sort of mitigate that as much as I can. But it seems like that has really seeped over into adults now, who now have just created these really crappy full-time jobs for themselves where they're working way more hours than they would at a normal job. They don't have the benefits they would at a normal job. I guarantee they're the worst boss they've ever had. Like anyone I've ever known who works for themselves always says they are their own worst boss, because you're going to be harshest to yourself, and setting those boundaries between, work and home becomes really blurry. And then I see there's sort of like a keeping up with the Joneses thing that's happening, where it's not just about supporting yourself. Because sure, you could probably, with a, 50 to 100,000 subscriber channel, you could probably support yourself if you don't live in like San Francisco or New York or LA. If you live like in a semi-sanely priced area, you can probably support yourself, without having to totally sell your soul as sponsored content creator person. But if you're trying to keep up with everybody, and then it becomes, well, everybody else is renting office space, so I should rent office space. Sometimes there's a legitimate need for that. You live in an apartment that's super loud and you're trying to record a bunch of audio and video. That just doesn't work. There's no space. There's too much noise. Maybe you do need to branch out. Maybe you need that physical separation between your home and your work lives. And maybe you don't, though. Maybe you're just trying to, somebody else did it and it looked cool, and now you're trying to do it so it can be cool too. And then, well, people are hiring staff, so I should hire someone. That's going to make my life easier, right? I feel really busy, so if I hire someone, that's going to help. Except now you have to train this person. Now you have to support this person. Now they're relying on you, and now you've just made yourself a manager. Like it's like, it reminds me of this. So, having very seriously considered going to film school myself, but having friends who did, one of the things is they just sort of knew when I get out of film school, I'm going to have to sort of work my butt off in like crappy positions and PA things and whatever for like 10 years or more. And then eventually I might get a break to like join the union and get a good paid thing. And I'll be sending out my like demo reel to all over the place and really, like, for lack of a better term, hustling to get my career going and networking and all that. And then the goal would be to get a union job where they have better pay, better benefits, and, you know, support, maybe a little more job security in a pretty insecure industry. And then YouTube showed up, and as YouTube started to become a more serious platform for people to make a living, you saw people doing that. Okay, well, instead of working in this industry where I have to put in a decade of my life before I can do this full time, I can just create my own thing over here. And now, though, I've literally read articles where the advice is like, hey, for new editors breaking into the industry, new camera operators, new whatever, you make your demo reel, you send it out to like big YouTube channels and you try to get hired by a YouTuber, and then you're their like part-time person or whatever. And so I'm just thinking, why would you do that? Because there was this whole system in play, which kind of sucked and was very hard to break into and not necessarily the most kind to its employees. And then this thing opened up where there was freedom, finally, freedom. And people embraced that. And now you've just recreated the system that you were able to escape, except worse, because the pay is lower, the benefits are lower, the stress is higher. Like, how is that a victory to me? It just doesn't make sense. And then when you think that, like, well, look, here's my hypothesis, I guess. If you're not just ultimately trying to be full-time content creator person, you have a lot of power because, again, if something doesn't do well, sure, that does suck, and there's no guarantee your channel or whatever you're creating is going to grow, but it's also no sweat off your back because you're still going to get, your bills are still going to be paid, your bases are still going to be covered because you have, your more traditional employment, which I know doesn't sound as exciting, but in your creative endeavor, that gives you the power because you can say no to things. You can decide, like my ethics statement that I talked about in a previous episode is so unfriendly to sponsors. I know that that's going to make it so people don't want to work with me. And that's okay. That's kind of the point. So that way, when somebody actually goes through that, if you see sponsored content on my channel, it means it has been vetted so thoroughly that I feel like you can trust it, and clearly I'm okay doing it. To this date, that has not happened yet. So it's gotten close, but it just hasn't happened yet because I haven't felt right about it, and I can just say no to that. And there's no risk to doing that. You can also just decide what kind of content you want to make. Do you have to make the content that's going to get the clicks and the views, or can you make the stuff that you actually want to make, that you're excited about making? The next video I have coming out this week is a lens review. Cool. Those are popular. The lens I'm reviewing came out in 2009, and it's not like super trendy right now. It's not a popular thing right now. It's just, I think it's very cool. It's just a macro lens that's been out for a long time that I think is really cool and really useful, and I want to make a video about it because I think it's super neat. And that's all the thought that went into it. I don't have expectations that that's going to be like the next video that makes my channel go crazy. It's probably actually not going to do very well, but I really enjoyed it. It's a really cool video. It was really fun to make. I got to explore something I was interested in. That's a win. And if it doesn't do well, oh well, for lack of a better thought process. And that does give you a lot of power to sort of decide how you want to take your content and your channel. And then you're creating this foundation. And I feel like by the time you slowly start growing, then, slow and steady wins the race, I guess. By the time you've sort of got these things in play, if somebody shows up and they want to, enter your playground, so to speak, they have to play by your rules. They don't get to dictate it. If you're just trying to reach out to everyone and begging and pleading, then you have to do whatever they say, which is going to mean like then you just have a boss. People are just commandeering your audience. People are telling you what to make on your own channel. And if the dollar sign is your only end goal, then maybe that's not a bad thing. For me, that's absolutely not the end goal, because the creative fulfillment is the end goal. The fun is the end goal. And so something like that would be just so devastating to be a part of. And I think when you go and look up like anything about creating a YouTube channel, the stuff that you're going to find is videos and podcasts and stuff about how to grow your audience, 10 tips to grow like this person, grow as fast as this, how to hack the system, what you need to get views, how to gain subscribers, get your first 1,000 subscribers. It's just all about growth and numbers and money, how to get your YouTube sponsorships, be a full-time YouTuber. And obviously, like, there's a place for that stuff, but I just want to also open up the conversation of maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe it's fine to not do that. Maybe it's fine to just sort of have a modest YouTube career or whatever you want to call it, where it's just, yeah, maybe you make a little money, but the most important thing is you're having fun. It doesn't mean you can't grow. It doesn't mean the potential to, I guess, to do it full time is not there. It's just not the thing that you're actively trying to choke to life and then losing yourself in the process and also alienating your audience in the process, because that's just like, why? I would just rather go do something else, to be honest with you. But I also think I should clarify a lesson that I learned too late when I started my YouTube channel, which was strategy is not bad. And everything I'm saying here also applies to podcasts, because I know it seems like a lot of people who have started like finding my channel and listening to podcasts also have their own podcasts. And the systems are kind of the same, which is I used to think strategy was really bad. Like, I wanted to create my channel and it needed to be pure. There will never be an ad on a video. Are you kidding me? There will never be sponsored content. There will never be, I don't want to make any money from this. And then probably like way longer than I should have, I realized, oh no, it's okay to do those things. There's just a right way to do it. Or let's put it this way. You can dictate how you do it, what's right for you. And that means I can strategize. I can spend a little time trying to work on a thumbnail that looks good and I think would entice people to click on the video, because I do want people to watch the video and I do want the channel to grow. But I can still then create the video that I want to create. I can still be in charge of my upload schedule. I can still decide not to work, with a potential sponsor or whoever. I can still be in charge of those things, but I can also be strategic about, creating a system that helps the channel grow, because I do want it to grow. Like, it would be silly to say I wanted to post these videos and I would be super happy if nobody watched them. Like, why? It's fun to make videos, sure, but the whole point of, posting them online is because you kind of want people to watch them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that. But I did think, for some reason, I just thought it would kill authenticity. And it took me, I would say close to a year of having a YouTube channel before I got kind of okay with the idea that, like, oh no, I could just sure, I could put a skippable ad on a video and make some money and no one's really going to complain about that. That doesn't mean I'm going to have 10 mid-roll ads or any mid-roll ads on my videos, because I really hate them. I hate watching those and they bother me, so I won't want to make anyone else do it. But I don't really mind the ads that you just skip at the beginning. I don't even notice them. So, okay, maybe I'd be okay doing that. Maybe I don't want to be a full-time, super aggressively seeking out sponsors or trying to get people to spend their money to support the channel. But if I'm talking about gear and I can put an affiliate link that, anytime you talk about gear on a channel, you need to put a link, because it's the first question people are going to ask. And if you're putting a link, why not make it an affiliate link where if they buy something, it doesn't change the experience at all for them, but then you get a little bit of a commission because you did kind of help sell that product for them. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And then you can kind of be a little more strategic about how you incorporate these things into what you're doing. And that is absolutely okay. And I bring that up because I've had a bit of anxiety this week over kind of changing the name of my channel, which is like, it's just sort of okay. Let me just back up and tell you the full story. Last week, I recorded a podcast with Peter, and Heather was the guest on that, which was super, super fun. I'll put a link to our podcast in the notes to this, so if you wanted to check it out. It's very much like YouTube focused, but it's really fun. It's just a different vibe when there's another person to talk with. And we did our podcast, which was, it's funny because it's sort of been the same thing. So Heather and I, on Thursday of last week, we did an episode of our podcast that was similar to this topic about why does everything you do have to become a money-making endeavor? And if you're not making money, then it's a failure. Why should you even do it? All that kind of stuff. Kind of like the beginning of this conversation. The very next day, we recorded a podcast with Peter where it was, how much money can you make on YouTube? And we sort of, because the three of us, Peter's a full-time YouTuber. I do YouTube on the side of a traditional day job, and Heather does YouTube like, she's in this like gray zone of YouTube is the foundation of her full-time job, but it's sort of like how she, accesses clients and other work. So it's not that her YouTube paycheck is her full-time job, but the world she creates through her YouTube channel is. So it's just, it plays a very different role in all of our lives, but all of us were like inspired to start a channel, watching Casey Neistat daily vlogs and feeling like we could just pick up a camera and make. So we had like these really similar things, totally different parts of the world, but at the same time, we were having these same feelings, these same ambitions, growing ambitions, and we started our channels, and now we're all at different places with them, and they all play different roles in our lives. And so it was interesting to just sort of discuss like, well, how are you making money? Like, what does that look like? It was just kind of an interesting discussion to sort of go off of. And then after that, when we were done recording, we were just kind of like continuing to have a chat basically. And the thing happened where Peter, like, I really feel like he's so supportive of me and my channel. It makes me feel so good because I know, like, I always feel like I'm an inconvenience in anybody's life. So when somebody who's very busy, like, actively reaches out to like form a friendship and, like, get to, I always feel like, oh gosh, I'm such an inconvenience. I don't know why. That's like my own problem. It's not his problem. But he really like wants me to do well and wants my channel to do well. And he's really good about like celebrating, milestones and stuff. Even knowing like his channel eclipses mine in basically every way. But after we were done talking, we were talking about channels, and he just said, he was like, hey Tom, I have a question. And I was like, what is it? And he was like, have you ever thought about changing your channel name to just your name? And I was like, oh. And then immediately Heather was like, yes, absolutely. And I was like, what? I had sort of like, you create your channel and you decide what you're going to name it. And it just sort of is that for the most part. And it's been 3 years at this point, and the name just sounds right to me. And there have been times where I've sort of thought like, well, it seems like a lot of people just use their regular name. Maybe that makes sense, but then like the thought leaves my head just because it's sort of hard to explain like the Enthusiasm Project. What is it? It doesn't necessarily bring to mind the type of content that I make. So like, is that confusing? I've had those thoughts a little bit, but I've never really thought about it. And then I think of like, well, there's channels like Potato Jet where, he's got like whatever, 800,000 subscribers, and based on the name of his channel, you would have no idea what he's talking about, but it's a camera cinematography channel. So it's like, it doesn't really, the biggest creator on the platform is PewDiePie. Like, clearly you don't have to just be using your real name to be successful. But it was interesting because Peter brought that up, and then Heather immediately was like, yes, yes, yes. And she's like, I have thought this for the longest time, but I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to feel like I was trying to tell you what to do with your channel. And then I reached out to another one of my friends, Eric Wen, who has a channel that's really all about like, not YouTube strategy in the way you would think, but it's about like the thought process, the genuinely thoughtful process behind creating a YouTube channel. And I ran the idea by him. I was like, what, like, do you think this is crazy? And he's like, I've thought for the longest time you should do that. And suddenly all of these independent sources from different areas of my life, whose opinions I really do respect, had been having the same thought. And then I thought about it. And the two things that pushed me over the edge were, I know people have a hard time, even though I put my name in the video descriptions, I literally start each video by saying my name is Tom. People still have no idea who I am, which in and of itself isn't a big deal. Like, who cares? But when people try to reference me, I've like, it's the thing has happened where I've stumbled across other videos where they'll say like, I was watching this video from the guy at the Enthusiasm Project and he was talking about blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to talk about blah, blah, blah. And like, they'll reference me, but they have no idea like who I am. Even Peter, when we first like kind of met each other earlier this year, he made a video that was like 3 YouTube channels that I am watching and you should too, or something like that. And mine was one of the ones he featured. And he was like, oh, this channel, it's the Enthusiasm Project. The guy, I think his name is Tom. Like, he didn't know. We had talked, like, well, digitally, but like, even then, he still didn't know my name. And then, like, 2 weeks later, I was watching a live stream of another channel I like, Peter Gregg, so another Peter. And I was like, I left a comment there, and Peter was like, oh my gosh, I love your channel. Like, he even, like, put it up on the screen during his live stream and was talking about videos, and he was like, but what's your name? Like, who are you? And I was like, this is a problem that when people actually want to like talk to me and reach out to me, they don't know who I am. And no matter how hard I'm trying to like put my name on the screen, say my name on screen, put my name in the description, people just don't know who I am. And so clearly like changing the channel name to just be my name will let people connect with that. Plus, I mean, truthfully, it is easier to connect with a person rather than like a sort of amorphous name. At least I think so, especially because there's, you know, if you think of something like Film Riot, that's a channel that has multiple people working on it. They've been around a long time. They're terrific, but it's a group of people. If you think of a channel like Indie Mogul, which is kind of the same thing, it's the same group of people, but there's a team working on this channel. When you think of the Enthusiasm Project, there's not a team. Like, it is just me doing it. And I know part of that is an insecurity because starting the channel in the first place forced me to step out from behind the camera, which was the place I was most comfortable. And having not my name as the channel was sort of the last little like thing to kind of like hide behind a little bit. And I know I do this at school too, like the pathway that I teach, which I started, is called Impact. I came up with the pathway, I came up with the name, wrote the courses, I've taught it for 5 years. I'm the only teacher that's a part of it. I've set up everything, built the studio, like everything. And I will still find myself talking about like, oh, well, this is where we do this. And when we, you know, need to do this, we have this giant photo printer over here. And I know it could be like, well, it's the royal we, talking about you and the students, but it just, for some reason, I don't know. It's just like being able to like hide behind a name like that. Like, oh, it's just, yeah, I'm just the teacher. I'm just a teacher of the pathway, even though it's just my pathway. Or yeah, like this is the YouTube channel that I work on, even though like it is just me doing everything for the channel. And so I think there was just hesitation to kind of bring down that last barrier. But then I looked at, and the other thing that pushed me over the edge aside from that was just looking at the URLs. YouTube doesn't let you just select whatever URL you want as a custom URL. Like, it's kind of based on your account name. But I did find out that youtube.com/TomBuck was available, which is like the simplest URL ever. And before that, it was youtube.com/The Enthusiasm Project, which is fine, except The Enthusiasm Project has 2 E's back to back, and there's such a potential for typos there. I've made the typo myself. Not that people are hand typing the URL all the time, but you find yourself typing it into a link somewhere or adding it somewhere or putting it on a website, and just 2 of the same letter, like a word ending and a next word beginning with the same letter, it's just always sort of a potential for error. And so Tom Buck, it's 7 letters. It is spelled exactly like it sounds. That was like, okay, simplicity. I like this. But then I've been struggling with like, the thing is, I like the name The Enthusiasm Project because it's an important thing to me. And Heather even asked, she's like, do you not want to change your channel name because you don't want to, or just because you're like married to the idea? And I was like, well, definitely this idea has been in my head since 2011, and it's been my YouTube channel since 2017. And starting my YouTube channel was such a moment of like planting the flag of getting out of my comfort zone, independence, the whole thing. And that name was a big part of that. So I don't want to lose that. And I was like comforting myself I'm completely overthinking this, by the way. Like literally most people who watch anything I make are not going to have these thoughts. But I was just like, it really did mean something to me to have that name, and to just have that disappear felt bad. And I was consoling myself by thinking like, well, I still have my podcast and the name completely makes sense to keep for the podcast. I even still have the website. But then it was like, I'm so anal retentive about consistency with things where it's like, should I just drop the name altogether so that way it's just me, and it's clearly just me. But then it's like, God, that feels narcissistic and weird. But that's also just kind of like the thing that most people do. But I was just going through all these things about, why do you have to do things the way most people do? Can't you do things your own way? And it's been like this weird existential crisis. So what I think I've kind of landed on is I do actually like having the channel name as my name, because it does make it more personable. It's me, my channel, I do everything on it. It is super weird though, because when people leave comments or replies and it pops up as a notification on my phone, it just says, Tom Buck, I think this video should have blah, blah, blah. And it's like, people are literally just, it's like mine, it's weird. But beyond that, I think it is a good way to actually make that bigger connection with an audience. And I am very curious in terms of strategy and growth, if that's something that's actually going to help the channel grow, because people feel more connected with the person who's running it. But I still want to keep the name. And so I was like, I was spending like a lot of the weekend trying to like redesign a channel banner and yada, yada, yada. And Heather's like, you're overthinking this. And I was like, I know, but it's important to me. And I think I was looking at, I went through literally every channel I'm subscribed to that's a person's name. And I looked at their channel to see if their channel was called something else. And several of them were. Like even Jonathan Morrison, who has like a tech channel with 2.5 million, 3 million subscribers, something like that. His channel name's his name, but his channel banner, everything is TLD, which at this point, like, I think it's Tech Life Daily. I don't even know what that actually stands for. Even Marquez Brownlee, one of the biggest creators, at least in the tech space on the platform, his channel name is his name, and then his banner, his channel is called MKBHD. So it's like, well, why clearly there's precedent for it not being too confusing if my channel name is my name, and then the channel is still like the Enthusiasm Project. Because ultimately it is a project that I started to share enthusiasm about things with people and to cultivate enthusiasm kind of in the, so it still sort of makes sense. Plus, of course, like I just finished making all these little graphics and animations and logos, and like the branding was locked down and on point. So naturally that's the time to just throw a wrench into it. Anyway, the whole reason I brought up that existential story was, if you're seeing that change pop up, there's the reason behind it, because I have actually gotten a handful, just literally a small handful of comments and emails from people asking why the change was made. And I'm so like, you actually noticed? Oh my gosh. And that actually does mean something to me. So I just wanted to explain if anybody had questions, but also to kind of go into, it is okay to have strategy. When I say I don't think everything needs to be your full-time income, money-making thing, that also doesn't mean that then you should just be super haphazard, like, yes, you should be able to create the content you want, but if you're running a camera tech channel and most of your videos are about camera tech and that's what your audience has been built up, and now you want to make a video about the best chocolate chip cookie recipe and a bunch of baking videos, sure, you have every right to put that on your channel, but it is going to be very confusing to your audience. And Peter and I have talked about the idea of respecting your audience. So even though it is your channel and you're the boss, and I think it is important to really be firm with like sponsors and anybody else who wants to come in and take control of that. But the audience for it, the people who have signed on to support you with some kind of agreement that, they know what they're getting and that's what they signed up for, there is somewhat of an obligation at least to respect that and to make sure that you deliver on that promise. And if you want to make pivots and things, there are ways to do that effectively. But, if you wanted to have, let's put it this way, if you have your camera channel and then you turn it into also half of a baking channel or whatever, you're just probably not going to do very well. And if you don't care about growth, if that's not why you're doing it, because you just want to put these things out there, you just want to create stuff and you couldn't care less about numbers, there's nothing wrong with that. If you do care about growth, then that's where it would maybe be strategic in a smart way to start a second channel. Here's my camera tech channel. Here's my cooking channel. They are both me, but they're separate sides of me, and they have separate audiences that want separate things. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not like falling prey to the stuff that I was bemoaning earlier in this episode. So ultimately, I kind of just wanted to sort of dive into that, because to take it back to the beginning, what does make me sad, not just seeing channels that I enjoy shift to content that I don't, because I'm just one person, like who cares if I enjoy it or not, but I'm guessing I'm not the only one who notices these things. You know, if a channel seems very fun and authentic and then starts doing a little sponsored content and then gets to a point where literally only does sponsored content, it really feels like now there's a wall put up between you and the person that you initially found and enjoyed the work that they make, and you're not getting to see the side of them or the work from them that you really enjoyed in the first place. You're just watching an ad. And that's what happened with that Osmo thing when it was in my subscription feed, whereas I was like, my YouTube feed right now is just 25 videos that are all 10 to 15 minute ads for this product. Like that's not anything that I want to spend my time watching. And that sucks, because every one of those people, I was subscribed to them. So every one of them does make stuff that I want to watch and I want to hear from them. I want to see a new video from them pop up, but it sucks that it's like, well, and that's the one that it has to be is an ad the whole time. And I have seen it, you know, sometimes it can work really well. Sure, sometimes people are effective with it. They can grow their channel, they become full-time. But I've also seen people dive so hard into it and then it grinds their channel to a halt, because I think a lot of people feel like I do and they're not as interested in it anymore, and they just sort of plateau and their channel kind of dies because they just crammed it so full of not the stuff that the audience signed up for. So ultimately, whether it's a YouTube channel or a podcast, I think it's a great thing to be strategic. If I could go back in time, I would like to give myself permission much earlier on in my YouTube journey to just say, dude, it's cool. You can totally just have some strategy behind this, and that's fine. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make the content bad. But I think it's very important. It's your thing. Like it's yours, and you get to be the boss of it. If you have your job on the side, you're probably not the boss in that. You have somebody else who kind of dictates what you do. This is your thing. You get to be in control of it. And I think that is worth protecting, because the magic of it is by protecting that and by creating the thing that you want to create, that's going to draw out people from all over the world who connect with you specifically because of the way that you're doing things. And if you think that won't happen, that's what I thought too when I started it. But the internet is so big and the world is so big and the platforms are so big that there are people out there who will find it. Like you just have to put it out there. And the more that you keep the signal pure to you, people will be able to find you more easily. And that really sounds like I had planned to tie it all together that way. That felt really poetic to me. Like I wrote that down and wanted to tie up this whole thing to that, and I didn't. I just made it up because that's how I felt right now. So I think that I'm not going to beat that. That's a great place to end on. But just reminding everyone that these things used to be fun, and they still, I think, above all, should be fun, because that's what's going to translate to your audience. And if you can turn that into more, if you can turn it into part-time, full-time work, that's awesome. If you can do it on your terms in a way that preserves the reasons you wanted to start in the first place and doesn't just turn it into a worse full-time job than you might already have. So enjoy what you're making, be kind to yourself, and protect the thing that you make, and you know, take care of that thing that you have invested your time, energy, and effort into. So if you want to check out my videos now, you can go to just youtube.com/TomBuck. Super easy. Of course, you can always go to anchor.fm/enthusiasm if you want to leave a voice message like Ryan, who, again, thank you so much for checking in on me. I really appreciate it. It's been a very rough month, and it's nice to just sort of get back into things feeling somewhat normal again. Put links to all the other podcasts that I talked about down there too. So thanks so much. I really just can't thank you enough for spending your time with me. I look forward to seeing you. I'll put this as a special episode since it's been so long, so I look forward to seeing you in less than a week. Stay safe, have fun, and I will see you next time.